I've never been beat up. I've never been stabbed up. I've never been shot up. You know what I'm saying? These are all the things that happen to him. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not the victim. I'm not a victim. You the victim, nigga. That at the end of the day, that's the truth of the matter.
For more than 25 years, 50 Cent and Ja Rule have been locked in one of hip-hop's most bitter and enduring feuds. Their conflict has unfolded through diss records, lawsuits, public humiliation, and moments that came uncomfortably close to real violence. Now in December 2025, that rivalry has reignited in a way that feels different, heavier, and more dangerous than before. This time, both men are speaking as if there is no path back to peace. The renewed tension exploded when 50 Cent released a 4-part Netflix documentary series titled Sean Combs: The Reckoning, which premiered on December 6, 2025. Executive produced by 50 Cent, the series positioned him as an industry insider willing to expose powerful figures and demand accountability within hip-hop's elite circles. He framed himself as a truth-teller, someone unafraid to confront uncomfortable realities and shine light on long-hidden issues. Ja Rule was not impressed. To him, the documentary was not an act of justice but an exercise in hypocrisy. Within days of its release, Ja launched a series of social media attacks aimed directly at his longtime rival. He accused 50 Cent of being a rat and a culture vulture, calling him a dry snitch who profits from chaos while pretending to be morally righteous. Ja specifically referenced 50's past legal issues involving his former partner Daphne Joy in 2013, which resulted in a vandalism plea and probation, arguing that someone with that history had no authority to judge others. Ya's message was blunt and deliberate. How could 50 Cent portray himself as hip-hop's moral watchdog when he had his own controversies? How could he appoint himself the arbiter of truth while benefiting financially from scandal? Ya went further, challenging 50 to donate profits from the documentary to domestic violence organizations if his intentions were truly altruistic. In Ya's view, everything Curtis Jackson does is driven by money, clout, and self-mythology. What makes this chapter feel more volatile than previous flare-ups is the context. This is not a publicity stunt between active chart rivals. This is a decades-long personal conflict being reopened by two men with deep history, unresolved resentment, and global platforms. Fans are no longer watching for entertainment alone. Many are genuinely concerned about where this escalation could lead. To understand why this feud still carries such intensity in 2025, it's necessary to return to its origin, which is far more complex than a simple musical disagreement. This was never about clashing styles or competing singles. It was rooted in Queens neighborhood politics, street hierarchies, personal relationships, and an incident that both men still describe very differently. There are two versions of how the feud began. In 50 Cent's account, one of his associates robbed Ja Rule or someone close to him, allegedly taking a chain. According to this version, Ja later saw 50 with the individual involved, leading him to believe 50 was connected to the robbery. The implication in 50's telling is that Ja was embarrassed, unable to protect his property, and humiliated within street circles. Ja Rule strongly rejects that narrative. In his version, the incident was not a crew-ordered robbery and had nothing to do with music or industry rivalry. Instead, it involved a personal dispute with a man he knew, driven by emotions rather than strategy. Ja insists the situation was resolved quickly through respected intermediaries and never justified the story that followed. What began as a single incident soon evolved into a legend shaped by power, platform, and repetition. As both men gained fame, their versions hardened into opposing myths. Now, decades later, those unresolved stories have resurfaced, fueling a conflict that refuses to fade and may be entering its most unpredictable phase yet.
Like, yo, Left, what up? Let me holler at you for a minute. I'm like, yo, Troy, what up, my nigga? Jumps out, car, we go walk up the block, we kicking it. He pulls out the burner on me. So now I'm shocked, you know what I'm saying? Because I know this, like, I know him, I fucks with him. So now I'm shocked. So he goes to the burner on me. He's like, yo, you holding, you strapped. I'm like, nah, I ain't got nothing on me right now.
According to Ja Rule, the incident that sparked the feud was not a calculated robbery orchestrated by 50 Cent's camp. Instead, it was a deeply personal confrontation involving a man named Troy, someone Ja actually knew and had a prior relationship with. Ja explained that the dispute had nothing to do with hip-hop record labels or rival crews. It centered on a woman. Troy believed Ja had been involved with his girlfriend while he was incarcerated, and that emotional betrayal fueled the confrontation. Ja described Troy as visibly shaken during the encounter, his hands trembling, his emotions raw. This was not a cold, professional stick-up, but a volatile moment driven by jealousy, pain, and desperation. In Ya's telling, the situation spiraled because emotions overpowered reason, not because of a calculated attempt to damage his reputation or career.
So he proceeds to say, yo, give me your chain. But he was like emotionally torn. He was like, he was having an emotional moment. Like had the shaky hand, like he was in a lover's triangle quarrel type situation. Like he was emotional, you know what I'm saying?
Ja Rule has consistently maintained that surrendering the chain was not a sign of weakness, but simple street logic. When someone points a gun at you, the argument is already over. In his view, no amount of pride outweighs survival. He insists the encounter had nothing to do with 50 Cent and everything to do with a personal dispute involving Troy and a woman. However, Ja argues that 50 took this isolated incident and reshaped it into a narrative that served his own image. According to Ja, 50 Cent transformed a private conflict into public mythology, positioning himself as connected to street power while portraying Ja as vulnerable. Ja emphasizes that he immediately addressed the situation through respected figures known as Black, Just, and Prem, individuals both he and Troy answered to. Within minutes, the chain was recovered, tensions were settled, and the issue was resolved without retaliation. To Ja, this resolution proves the story never warranted the legend it became. This distinction is central to Ja Rule's criticism. He repeatedly states that 50 Cent is an exceptional storyteller who takes fragments of truth and expands them into narratives that elevate his own persona. Because 50 had a louder platform, sharper marketing, and greater industry backing, his version of events became the accepted history. Over time, repetition turned narrative into fact, while alternative perspectives were buried. Ja is often referred to 50 as MC Gusto, referencing the film CB4*, where a fictional rapper fabricates a gangster identity to sell records. In Ya's eyes, 50 Cent follows a similar blueprint, borrowing credibility from real street situations and repackaging them into a marketable persona. Whether that characterization is fair or not, the result was inevitable. By the early 2000s, two men from the same Queensboro were on an unavoidable collision course. The conflict escalated quickly. Physical confrontations followed, including a 2000 Atlanta club altercation and a heated incident at New York's Hit Factory studio. Soon, the dispute moved fully into music. What began as personal resentment evolved into a full-scale industry war. G-Unit versus Murder Inc., Shady Records versus The Inc. Millions of dollars and entire careers were at stake. The primary weapon in this war was the diss track. In hip-hop, words carry power, and both artists understood that reputation could be destroyed through verses alone. 50 Cent fired the first major lyrical shot with Life on the Line in 1999, recorded for his shelved album Power of the Dollar. The song mocked Murder Inc.'s tough image and directly questioned Ya's authenticity. The original version reportedly contained even harsher attacks, nomming Ya and others explicitly, and it helped establish 50's underground reputation before mainstream success. However, it was Wanksta in 2002 that shifted the balance permanently. Released on the No Mercy, No Fear mixtape and featured on the 8 Mile soundtrack, the song became a cultural phenomenon. The term Wanksta, combining wannabe and gangster, entered mainstream vocabulary and followed Ja Rule throughout his career. The track peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100, signaling that 50's narrative had won public acceptance. The decisive blow came in February 2003 with Back Down, featured on Get Rich or Die Tryin'. Produced by Dr. Dre, the song was deliberately stripped and ominous with a ticking sound that underscored its menace. Using Ya's government name Jeffrey Atkins, 50 dismantled the Murder Inc. persona line by line, blending mockery with intimidation. The track attacked Ya's credibility, stature, and musical direction simultaneously. At the time, the power imbalance was undeniable. 50 Cent had Eminem and Dr. Dre behind him, two of the most influential figures in music. Get Rich or Die Tryin' sold over 8 million copies worldwide, cementing 50 as a global star. Ja Rule, meanwhile, struggled to regain momentum. Every response felt reactive, every counterpunch late. Looking back, this period defined the feud's trajectory. 50 controlled the narrative, the timing, and the audience. Ja fought back, but history favored the louder voice. What began as a disputed incident in Queens evolved into one of hip-hop's most lopsided and consequential wars.
This is your second album, I believe, isn't
Yes,
it?
my first
It's called
one.
Get Rich or Die Tryin', 50 Cent. It's sold so far 8 million copies.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's great.
Wow, and you've just won loads more awards. This week you won some over in Monte Carlo, I believe.
Yeah, in the world music.
By 2003, 50 Cent was not just winning the feud, he was dominating the industry. 8 million albums sold, world awards, sold-out tour, and non-stop radio play reinforced the power imbalance between him and Ja Rule. Each success served as a public reminder of what 50 was gaining and what Ja was losing. In that climate, Ja Rule released Loose Change in April 2003, a move that would ultimately accelerate his decline. Loose Change was not a focused response. Instead of targeting 50 alone, Ya attacked Eminem, Dr. Dre, Busta Rhymes, and Lil Mo. He dismissed 50 as Curtis and portrayed him as insignificant, accusing him of cooperating with law enforcement. Ya implied that surviving multiple gunshot wounds meant collaboration with authorities, a claim designed to damage street credibility. The most damaging lines, however, targeted Eminem's family. Ya crossed a line by referencing Eminem's mother, his ex-wife, and most controversially, his young daughter. This decision shifted public perception instantly. What was once viewed as competitive aggression became desperation. Fans, radio personalities, and industry figures recoiled from the attack on a child, regardless of the feud's intensity. The backlash was swift. Ya's image suffered, particularly among audiences who associated him with mainstream hits and crossover appeal. Loose change did not weaken his enemies, it isolated him. Days later, Eminem, 50 Cent, and Busta Rhymes responded with Hail Mary 2003, a group freestyle that emphasized Ya's obsession with Tupac and mocked his attempts to replicate a hardened image. The track highlighted the imbalance in support. Ya stood alone, while 50 had a coalition of heavyweight allies. Ya attempted to reclaim control with Blood in My Eye * later that year, an album fully dedicated to attacking 50 and G-Unit. While aggressive in tone, the project failed to recapture his earlier dominance. The lead single, Clap Back, peaked far below his past chart successes, confirming that momentum had shifted permanently. Ultimately, Ya's strategy of overwhelming retaliation could not compete with 50's precision and timing. 50 chose his moments carefully, striking when conditions favored him. Ya swung wildly, hitting everything except his target. By the end of 2003, the feud's outcome was no longer in doubt.
And there's something going on between you and Ja Rule, who's another rapper. I don't know how many people are familiar with him. I'm sure rap fans obviously are, but other people who aren't as into rap won't know. But he's a talented man as well. He seems to be doing very well for himself.
Not anymore.
That brief "not anymore" said everything. In 2 words, 50 Cent didn't just dismiss Ya Rule's current success, he erased his relevance entirely. He pushed Ya into the past tense. The harsh reality was that the numbers backed him up. Sales, airplay, and visibility all told the same story.
Now, you guys have had any number of, you've had a few exchanges.
Yeah, but they were all very minor exchanges. Like,
So is that behind? That's gone now?
yeah, it's just, people, like, without even sharing conversation or knowing each other, people can grow a dislike into each other. And hip-hop is very competitive. So they feel like if you come in with something and it's aggressive enough to the point to move them out of the
Notice how deliberately 50 Cent reframes even the most public moments of his feud with Ya Rule. By reducing major confrontations to minor exchanges, he minimizes Ya's importance altogether. This isn't accidental. It's psychological warfare, making an opponent feel insignificant even while discussing the rivalry that defined an era of hip-hop. When you deny someone the status of a true rival, you strip them of legitimacy. By 2005, 50 Cent was one of the most dominant figures in music. His albums topped charts, his singles dominated radio, and his presence was unavoidable. Ya Rule, by contrast, was no longer at his commercial peak. Stations that once played his hits nonstop had moved on. Magazine covers stopped coming. High-profile features disappeared. The culture shifted, and Ya was no longer at the center of it. Years later, Ya Rule himself admitted in a 2013 interview that 50 Cent won the beef. But winning a battle doesn't mean erasing the damage it leaves behind. The scars from that era ran deep, and both men understood that. The rivalry never truly ended, it just entered a colder, quieter phase. For years, the conflict existed as a low-level war. Occasional social media shots, public jokes, petty comments whenever one of them trended. 50 mocked Ya over the Fyre Festival collapse in 2017 when Ya's involvement became a national punchline. Later came jokes about Irv Gotti during periods of online rumor. It all felt routine, almost predictable, like a feud that would eventually fade with time. Then everything shifted. The release of 50 Cent's Diddy-focused documentary reignited tensions immediately. Ya Rule responded aggressively, resurfacing past allegations against 50, particularly those involving Daphne Joy. He shared old and AI-generated images, framing his argument clearly. This wasn't about Diddy, it was about Curtis Jackson positioning himself as hip-hop's moral authority. Ya challenged 50's credibility, questioning how someone with his own controversial history could claim the moral high ground. He dared 50 to donate documentary profits to domestic violence charities, framing the challenge as a test of sincerity. In Ya's view, the motivation wasn't justice, it was money, attention, and narrative control. For the first time in years, the feud hinted at legal consequences. Ya threatened defamation lawsuits over perceived smears, opening the door to courtrooms, discovery, and sworn testimony. That possibility alone raised the stakes. Lawsuits don't just revisit public narratives, they dig into private records, histories, and relationships neither side may want examined. This wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about legacy, control, and how history would remember both men. For Ja Rule, the issue wasn't just personal, it was philosophical. He sees a pattern in 50 Cent's behavior that extends far beyond their feud, and he believes that pattern finally deserves scrutiny.
I hate that we're connected in that way. You know what I'm saying? Because really, we really have nothing in common other than we're from the same neighborhood. That's the only thing that we really have in common. You understand? We're two different, you know, we're two different people. You know what I'm saying? I'm a stand-up nigga. He's not. You understand? And that's really the basis of who we are.
Ja Rule draws a sharp line between himself and 50 Cent using a powerful concept from street culture, being stand-up. In that world, being stand-up means loyalty, honor, and keeping your word. It's one of the highest forms of respect. Ja is saying that 50 doesn't qualify. That accusation goes far beyond their personal feud. Ja argues that 50's behavior follows a consistent pattern across his entire career. According to him, 50 has fallen out with nearly everyone who helped elevate him. Eminem, who signed him and amplified his rise, Dr. Dre, who produced his biggest records, and even Floyd Mayweather, once one of his closest friends. In Ya's telling, these aren't isolated conflicts, they're evidence of a larger character flaw. Ya also references the infamous airplane incident, where the two men unexpectedly ended up seated near each other mid-flight. Given their history, the situation could have escalated, but it didn't. There was no confrontation, just brief acknowledgement and silence. Two rivals agreeing without words to keep the peace thousands of feet in the air. To Ya, that moment symbolized the real dynamic between them, not explosive violence, but controlled tension. Then Ya flips one of 50 Cent's most famous narratives, the shooting. For 50, surviving 9 gunshots became a defining symbol of toughness and resilience. He built an identity around survival and transformation. Ya sees it differently. In his view, being shot doesn't make you powerful, it makes you a target. Strength, he argues, is navigating street life without becoming a victim. Ya insists he's never been beaten, stabbed, or shot, not because he avoided danger, but because he moved correctly. In his version of events, survival isn't about enduring trauma, it's about avoiding it altogether. That contrast highlights how differently the two men define respect, credibility, and success. 50 Cent has openly discussed how the shooting shaped his voice, his music, and his persona. For him, it's a badge of honor. For Ja Rule, it's proof of fundamentally different paths, two men from the same environment who walked away with very different interpretations of what strength really means.
Where were you shot? Which part of the body? Where did the bullet?
Oh, man, I got shot in my hand. My thumb came out of my hand, my face.
Shot in the face?
Yeah.
And where did that come out?
Out the two.
Wow, oh my goodness, there's a hole there.
Yeah,
I don't know why I'm surprised the bullet went through there, but it's alarming.
Yeah, it kind of changed my voice too, and this is the voice that sells 8 million records, so I think everything happens for a reason.
This is the voice that sold over 8 million records. For 50 Cent, the shooting wasn't just a traumatic event, it was a crucible. The bullet that passed through his face permanently altered his speech, creating the distinct slur that became part of his identity. He transformed trauma into triumph, turning survival into branding and pain into power. Ja Rule interprets that same moment very differently. To him, the shooting isn't proof of toughness, it's evidence that 50 was a target. Someone things happened to rather than someone who controlled outcomes. This difference in perspective sits at the core of their conflict. The question now is where this feud goes next. Ja Rule insists he's moved on, yet continues to respond to nearly every major 50 Cent move. It's a contradiction that's hard to ignore. Either he's unaware of it, or he simply doesn't care. As of mid-December 2025, 50 hasn't directly responded to Ya's latest attacks, but history suggests silence is temporary. 50 Cent rarely lets insults linger unanswered. Ya claims prison changed him, that he has perspective now, that he no longer wants to play this game, and yet every new chapter pulls him back in. Every documentary, every post, every headline, Ya believes the cultural tide is finally shifting, that people are beginning to question the stories they accepted 2 decades ago. There has been a broader reevaluation of early 2000's rap beefs. Audiences are asking whether dominance came from superior talent or superior marketing, from truth or narrative control. Ya believes this reassessment threatens the image 50 spent years constructing. In Ya's view, 50's continued attacks aren't about old grudges. They're about fear. Fear that Ya's reputation could recover. fear that the long-standing narrative might crack, fear that people might see Curtis Jackson differently. What's most striking about this feud in 2025 is how it's evolved. Diss tracks have given way to social media campaigns and documentaries. Physical confrontations have been replaced by legal threats and public character battles, but the underlying animosity hasn't softened, it's hardened. Despite sensational headlines, there's no credible evidence that the conflict is becoming physically violent. It remains verbal and digital. Still, in an industry shaped by past tragedies, every escalation carries weight. History reminds everyone how easily words can spiral. 50 Cent knows that history well, he carries its marks. And yet he continues to provoke because provocation is part of who he is. It's how he built relevance and how he maintains it in an industry that moves on quickly. For Ja Rule, this feud has reshaped his legacy in ways he never wanted. He was once a dominant force with chart-topping hits, a powerful label, and global reach. Now, for many, he's remembered primarily through the lens of this rivalry. That's what makes this story compelling and unsettling, not the threat of violence, but the certainty that neither man will truly let it end. At this point, the feud isn't just part of their story.